Cancer Sun and Rising. Welcome to your June 2022 Astro Update. It's Raina here. So in June, the sun goes into your sign, just like every year. And it's probably a time when a lot of Cancer people, they really feel like life starts kind of getting more back to normal. Maybe your energy levels improve around the third week of June every year because, well, for one reason, there are usually personal plans, but certainly the sun itself is going to be in that 12th house, and that is the end of an older cycle, the beginning of a new cycle, and the 12th house itself represents solitude, contemplation, and other things that are really Piscean rather than dealing with you directly, because when you have plants in your first house, then that's where your sun or ascendant resides. And so it's going to make you more true to yourself. On the 3rd of the month, Mercury goes direct. Now, Mercury started off in Gemini, but it went back into Taurus. So this is in your 11th house of hopes and wishes and friendships. You may have been getting back in touch with your buddies or what have you in the past few weeks, and kind of like getting up to date with that. And when Mercury goes direct, also reviewing kind of long range goals, but then you can start moving forward, implementing these things. And this can involve setting new goals. Maybe there are some things you have to tweak. You have to do some research on how you're going to make something happen. And now you can really move forward. The very next day, Saturn goes retrograde, and June is considered at the end of the month more than at the beginning, a green light portal for approximately 2 months, where it's launch time, where things are more likely to kind of gel. And yet we have this Saturn retrograde at the beginning of the month. Well, Saturn is not a personal planet, so it doesn't tend to affect us personally. However, you should always pay attention to the sign that Saturn is in, as well as the house placement in your natal chart, because that will give you some indication of karmic issues that might be, we could say, plaguing you or challenging you, as well as areas that can mature. In other words, where time can heal all wounds and heal the influence of Saturn in a particular house, and then you're able to manifest what you want in that area. But that's your natal chart. This is not what we're talking about now. We're talking about the transit of Saturn. And so Saturn in Aquarius for Cancer is going to be the 8th house. Whoa, that's quite a transit for you to have, because Saturn in the 8th is very much focused on shadow work. And somebody wrote to me on YouTube and said something like, not to talk lightly about shadow work, it's a big deal and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I understand what people mean by that, because, when you're kind of poking around beneath the surface of your psyche, it can get a little bit hairy sometimes if you really are out of touch with it. Well, first of all, I don't think that a lot of Cancer people are out of touch with their issues. I think that the problem that you have is learning how to properly handle the emotions, not so much have them. And I think for Cancer, there's just a lot of fear of letting go. There's a fear of being able to let people do what they're going to do, trying to hold on to things, trying to control people. And once you kind of get a handle on why you're like that, and sometimes it can involve death when you're very young, of somebody very close to you, and just feeling like at any minute the other shoe's going to drop. Or maybe it was, some other kind of trauma that might have taken you by surprise and made you want to be a micromanager to try to protect your emotional self. You can feel safe. Some people do go into therapy when Saturn is in the 8th house. But this is the retrograde. So what is that going to mean? As far as I can see, this can be a time when perhaps you are assimilating the work that you've already done. So the thing is that the work, as far as I'm concerned, is something that can just involve living your life, but living it on a conscious level and being able to feel your feelings. For those people who have had addictions, I do believe that this time frame is supportive of this because your 12th house is Gemini, and you've had some eclipses here. That's one of the houses of addictions. Oh, no, actually, the 8th house is also a house of addiction. So, and they say, it's a house of obsession. I feel that a lot of addictions are obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, where people feel compelled to do something that can be extremely damaging to them. And there's sometimes it's just being distracted by having to feed a drug habit, or if it's alcoholism, but you're like that. You have something that you have to focus on that's outside of your emotions. But of course, a numbing agent itself, for people who are water signs, can feel things so deeply that they just can't bear it. So with the situation going where you have Saturn here, Saturn wants you to become disciplined. Run a tight ship. So because this is a water house, you have to learn how to get things under control without being controlling. That's the key word. While Saturn is retrograding, there may be some downtime of kind of like easing up on some of these things, and I don't personally believe that it's always what people are doing, unless it's something like therapy and people are going into intensive therapy. But other than that, I think a lot of it is learned awareness and learning not to distract oneself, including numbing out. But again, sometimes that has to be done with professional help because of the nature of it. Sometimes it's very dangerous to try to quit an addiction on your own because you just put yourself in jeopardy physically. It all depends on the individual. But in any case, it's deep work. It's not something shallow. And Saturn is not a shallow planet. Saturn isn't going to let anybody get away with anything. And when it's retrograde, though, it can maybe give you a feeling of having the summer off or something like that. I'm trying to remember when Saturn goes direct. I think it's in October or November. So it's going to be retrograding for a few months. And also, this can be related to discipline with finances, especially those that don't involve you, that involve other people, because you may have been responsible for somebody's estate or other kind of, or your spouse's, maybe your spouse is unable to work and you're kind of pulling their weight and paying for everything. But maybe now you're going to get a respite from that for a little while. Okay, on the 13th, Mercury goes back into Gemini. That's where it started. That's the 12th house. So I really believe that for some people, there can be this looking at their goals and how some of their own self-defeating patterns are blocking them from their goals. And one of the things that I think could play into this is because, especially with the sun in Cancer, you may have inner planets in Gemini as well. So you might have, 12th house placements, but whatever, it doesn't need to be that way. But I'm just saying that Gemini is very social, and I feel like water signs are people. A water sign is a people person. See, I can't say the plural because how do I say that? People. So I like to say, so it's better for me to say this singular, a people person. And so that means that you enjoy the company of other people, and yet you may be a little bit feeling like resistant about spending time alone for whatever reason. And that can be for there might be different reasons for that. And so, because of that, you may be around people who are not necessarily good for you in terms of your spiritual growth or your path. And the 12th house is a spiritual path and the spiritual life, multi-dimensional influences and things like that. And so it's also the house of suffering and addiction. And so you may realize, oh, wow, I'm really somebody who was trying to solve my problems by, escapism of some sort. And that's the 12th house as well. Usually you say substance abuse, but addiction can be, you could be addicted to relationships. You could be addicted to just socializing. Obviously, it's not the same type of addiction. It's not like a physical addiction where you're going to have detox symptoms or whatever you want to call it. But it still is something that can create compulsive behaviors and also keep you from that inner work because it's a diversion. So it's a distraction, in other words. So what you want to do is you want to look at it at the deepest level. And I think that you can do that this time. And you can also break the habit too. So anyway, that's very interesting. And now it's going back, it's gaining strength. On the 14th is a full moon at 23 degrees of Sag, which is in your 6th house of work, service to others, in other words, also health, daily routine. Some of you may be letting go of a certain schedule that you have. Maybe the 9 to 5 isn't working for you anymore. You've had some triggers to this in the last year and a half when you've had eclipses in Sagittarius. So that may have broken you out of this habit of just being on that hamster wheel. And you can work at a pace or at a time that is more, tailor-made for you rather than you having to conform to it. I think about myself. In my natal chart, I have Neptune, even though that's not the exact same influence. Like I'm doing this reading and it's like 7:00 at night. I do things very, at very odd times sometimes. I'm not very consistent. And maybe there are some downsides to that, but the upside is that there are times when my energy levels are greater. And sometimes it's first thing in the morning, but a lot of times I find that I gain my stride mentally later in the day into the evening. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that gets a little bit spaced sometimes in the morning. But some people are fresh as a daisy first thing, and they're raring to go. They're morning people, and they just got it like that. And that's great. So it might be a different thing. Maybe you work second shift, and now you're going to work at 9 to 5. Who knows? It's all going to be different. And some of you, this may be leaving a job. For some of you, it might be getting a promotion. But it might be realizing what your dharma is, what you came here to do to serve other people. So many possibilities. On the 21st, the sun goes into your sign. It's the solstice time. It's a power time when we change seasons, when we change into cardinal sun signs. And this means doing, action on the horizon. And we naturally feel like something's going to rock and roll because we can sense there's change in the air. Think about it. I happen to live in the Midwest when we have 4 distinct seasons, although I'm in the middle of spring and I'm in shorts and a t-shirt and I'm really boiling. And it was close to 90 degrees today, Fahrenheit. Last week I was wearing a winter coat and mittens, I think. So very crazy extremes. And sometimes it doesn't feel like there are 4 seasons. Sometimes it seems like it goes from winter to summer. But when you experience those 4 seasons, you really get the shift vibe. Because you can feel those emotions of each season, what they represent. And you know, as the sun goes into your sign, it may feel restorative. It might feel like, wow, you know, the sun is in my first house. I'm raring to go again. I was feeling a little bit draggy when the sun was in the 12th house. And of course, the time when you will really feel the most energized is when the sun is within maybe 5 degrees before and after your sign. So, you know, not to say that you won't feel any better, but you'll really start to feel it then. Okay, and then some of you are going to have your birthday in June. So happy birthday to you early Cancers. The very next day, we have Venus going into Gemini. Venus is going into that 12th house. If you know, one of the things when you were socializing, you may have met somebody through your friends, and you decided to pursue a relationship that is not broadcast to the public. And maybe you feel kind of awkward about having a relationship and, you know, with these people around you because you don't want people talking about you or what have you. I'm not saying that you're doing anything wrong, but just the scrutiny of other people, and you just want to kind of have some time to yourselves. So you're being a bit secretive about your relationship. For other people, there could be some kind of, you know, extramarital situation going on, or seeing somebody outside of your relationship or theirs. That's not an endorsement of mine. I'm just saying what it could be for some people. That doesn't mean I approve of that, but just saying. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. And another thing that it could be is meeting somebody who feels like a soulmate. Remember that if somebody feels familiar, they may be, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to be a nightmare of a relationship, because sometimes I get that in private readings, that people feel very comfortable, or, well, comfortable isn't the word, but they feel like somebody is very familiar to them and they feel like they've known them before. Well, yeah, maybe you have, but, you know, that doesn't mean that the relationship's a good one. And I'm speaking specifically about situations where there are problems. I'm not saying, you know, across the board by any stretch of the imagination. On the 28th, you have the new moon at 7 degrees of your sign. So that's very interesting. For some of you, this is going to fall in your 12th house after 7 degrees, or maybe, I don't know, like about the sun in Cancer. Probably if you're born in July, that it will be actually in your 12th house. So for some of you, the cycle is going to actually be really feeling like it's starting up at the end of July when we have a new moon in Leo. But for those of you, especially within the first 7 degrees of Cancer, this is a time for you to reconnect to your self. And that means you're starting a whole new solar cycle. It means that you want to make your wishes, set your intentions for the coming 12 months. On that same day, so plant those seeds of intention. Even if this is falling in your 12th house, it can actually be, I think it can be very powerful to set intentions from the 12th house perspective, because that's the womb of creation and the cycle is continuous. It's not like it stops at the 12th house. It goes into the first house. So you're just really thinking ahead even more so. And to me, the more intentional a person is, the more that they can manifest things, because they're not putting all their eggs into one basket. They are, maybe planning more and not just waiting. Some people use astrology like Santa Claus. Oh, when is this going to happen for me? And they're not willing to put any kind of effort into it. That's ridiculous. So please understand that. On the same day as the new moon in Cancer, Neptune retrogrades, and Neptune is in a water sign. It's in Pisces. So this is your 9th house, and Neptune retrograde can lead to seeing things as they really are. Now, because of the nature of Neptune, this can feel kind of harsh. This can feel like a reality check, but something that is not that easy to kind of wrap your brain around. I don't know how to put it. It's okay. So let's give an example from the 9th house perspective. Let's say that you're somebody who is in your early 20s. I'm just saying, like, you went to college for the first time. And, that was kind of your dream. Maybe you're the first in your family to go to college, or even if not, you were kind of proud that you were able to get in. Because I think a lot of Cancer people tend to be good students because you have a good memory, and that helps you to memorize things. But the thing about college is that it's something that there are, like everything else, things change. And, what college represented traditionally doesn't seem to be as true today as it used to be, meaning that there was this encouragement for people to think for themselves. And I say this because I actually went back to college in my 30s, and I ended up getting a degree. And I did have some wonderful experiences. So it's not like, oh, I just regret even going back. But I did find eventually that I saw it for what it was. And there's just a lot of, really pushing it when it may not be appropriate for an individual. And so if you feel like you are in college, but you don't like what is happening, or, you just don't feel like this is for you, you don't have to feel this sense of failure or whatever that negative emotion would be, shame, confusion, what have you, that you can't fit into that environment. And this has nothing to do with grades or whatever. This may just be that maybe you're going through a spiritual awakening, and you feel like everything seems so fake to you. It doesn't seem real. When Neptune goes retrograde, it's like the truth is unvarnished. When Neptune is in full force, it can create this beautiful fantasy. And I'm not saying that Neptune direct is all just fake and fantasy and not real, but it certainly is idealistic. And idealism is fine, but when it gets to the point where a person feels disillusioned because they change their mind about something, then you know that they built it up too much. So these kinds of issues. Another thing can be a religious group that you belong to, or a religion itself that you used to put so much stock in, and now you feel this sense of like it's not helping me, or I've outgrown it, and it can feel very uncomfortable, especially if you grew up in that religion, because you may feel that it was your backbone. It was what kept you afloat. And usually I think of the ninth house as organized religions. So this can be a real theme about that. Maybe you have, Neptune has been in Pisces for the last 10 years. So it's been in this sector for a long time. And little by little, you may have become more spiritual than religious. And that dogma that the ninth house can represent, because this is the house also of the law. And I was very confused about this, because I always thought that the seventh house was the law. And then I kind of figured in my mind, well, the seventh house is about legal affairs. So it's actually the courtroom action and the legal decrees. But the ninth house is the law themselves, and they are in the books. And just like the Bible, or just like all these other books that have the do's and don'ts, the ins and outs. And sometimes people don't resonate with it anymore. And it doesn't mean that they reject it out of hand, but they may feel like I have expanded, and that's also in the ninth house, and I'm not just seeing the world in this way. And so I have to say goodbye to this kind of this philosophical belief system, because it no longer works for me. And that can have, other things going on with it too, including family members, spouses who clash. So being able to have faith, which is another thing about the ninth house, and not allow yourself to kind of second guess yourself if you're having doubts about things that you believed in at one time. Allow yourself to be there. Don't try to whitewash it and make it something other than it is, because you'll get it sorted out. And eventually, as Neptune goes retrograde, you'll question these beliefs, and maybe there will be a crisis of faith from time to time with different things, but you can also feel this sense of like your life taking a new turn, and you're experiencing growth as a result. So that's what I have for you, Cancer. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, especially at this time where you are poised to enter a new cycle, I have double readings that are packages where you're getting 2 readings, full-length readings, an hour each for a special price. And there is a significant savings for these readings if you look at it per hour. And the first hour is the natal chart itself. So this is something that is true for you all the time. I mean, if you resonate with it, of course, which you have to do. And it's just like your cosmic blueprint. You came into this world, time you were born. Second hour is some important transits for the year ahead. And really, I like to be, even though I give you dates, I really encourage people to look at this as a bigger picture thing, as astrological trends, because all the things that I enumerate there might be other things that are going on that will be influences for you in this arena. And just getting that feel for, okay, what are the types of transits that are occurring in my chart in the next year can kind of validate some of your dreams and give structure to them. So that's called the deep dive reading. And then I have one that includes the tarot and a chart analysis called the whole enchilada. You can find out about all of my readings. I have standalone readings too at the link below. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.